Hi, everybody. My name is Christine Data. Welcome to the first episode of My True Crime Obsession, where the focus is always victims first. In today's episode, I will be speaking about the Long Island serial killer Gilgo Beach murder case. If you're from Long Island and you've been living under a rock for the past 10 years, then maybe you are familiar with or have heard about this infamous murder case. For those of us who live here in New York, especially those of us living on Long Island, this case has been front and center for well over 10 years now. But it seems that the investigation may finally of the Long Island serial killer and who the Long Island serial killer is, it's a question that's eluded investigators for well over a decade, and it may finally have been answered. A few weeks ago, on Thursday, July 13th, 2023, Suffolk County Police Department made an arrest in the Gilgo Beach serial killer case. Suffolk County Police Department arrested 59-year-old Rex Heuermann of Massapequa Park, New York. He is considered the chief suspect and is responsible for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amberlynn Costello, 3 of the 4 victims that make up the Gilgo Beach 4. Heuermann is also considered a suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, the 4th of the Gilgo Beach 4. But as of today, he has not been charged for her murder. Since his arrest, the media has been saturated, every news outlet, with details about Rex Heuermann. But today, I'd like to shift that focus. Let's put the focus where it really belongs. Let's put it on the victims. Let's put the focus on Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber. Maureen Ducharme Brainerd Barnes was just 25 years old when she went missing. On July 9th, 2007, Maureen called a friend in Connecticut at 11:43 p.m., and she told her friend that she was going to meet a client near Times Square in Manhattan. That was the last time Maureen was ever seen or heard from again. Her remains were found on Monday, December 13th, 2010, on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. Melissa Bartholomew was just 24 years old. She was last seen at her residence, a basement apartment located at 1149 Underhill Avenue in the Bronx on Sunday, July 12, 2009. She told a friend she was going to see a man in Manhattan and would be back in the morning. Melissa's body was found on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach on Saturday, December 11, 2010. Megan Amelia Gove Waterman was last seen alive on surveillance cameras in the early morning hours of Sunday, June 6, 2010, at the Holiday Inn Express along the Long Island Expressway in Hauppauge, New York. At 1:30 a.m., Megan Waterman left the hotel to meet a client. That was the last time anyone saw or heard from her ever again. Megan's body was found on Monday, December 13, 2010, on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. Amberlynn Overstreet Costello was just 27 years old, and she was last seen outside her residence at 1112 America Avenue in West Babylon on Thursday, September 2nd, 2010. She was going to meet a client that day, and that was the last time anyone saw or heard from Amber ever again. Her body was found on Monday, December 13, 2010, on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. These are just cold, hard facts as they relate to the case about Maureen, Megan, Amberlynn, and Melissa. But let's dive much deeper. Who were Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber? The media chooses to describe Maureen, Megan, Melissa, and Amberlynn as sex workers. And while that might be true, please don't be mistaken. This title is simply just that, just a title. This does not encapsulate their lives or begin to describe who they really were. They were so much more than just mere sex workers. These were women that came from loving families, families that continue to mourn their loss to this day, families that continue to search for answers, families that continue to search for closure that may never come, families that continue to fight for justice. And today I'm honored to be joined in the studio by special guest Raul Montero. Raul has followed this case from its inception. He has his own website, Catchlist, dedicated to the case and dedicated to the victims. Raul also has his own Facebook page, Long Island Serial Killer, Lisk, Gilgo Beach Killer, Oak Beach Investigation. And I consider Raul an expert on this case and an invaluable resource. He has done a tremendous amount of research. And he also happens to be a liaison to the victims' families and has developed a close bond with many of the victims' families since their loved ones went missing. So thank you, Raul, today for being here, and happy to have you join me.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm still nervous, so I'm
Okay.
gonna just be free-forming. And thanks for the introduction. It's humbling. I just the list groups are groups that I either admin one or mod the other one. A lot of that research had already been done, but having an open sourced access to it helped build my own knowledge. I remember actually seeing newspaper regarding Peaches's discovery in '97 and being moved by that and finding it curious. Um, for me, I was working on Long Island at the time in 2011 when Shannon went missing, or 2010 when Shannon went missing, and then with the discoveries of the GB4, Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber in 2011, it pretty much forever changed my free time in my life. You become, I don't want to say enamored. You become committed. You become really committed to understanding all of the facts, which is what I did probably several years before I even joined the Facebook group on it or was invited to one. It was for me just understanding a lot of the nuances, sort of splicing through what was fact, what was rumor, what was innuendo, what was a brought up narrative that isn't based in reality but gained traction. And I found through some of these groups and amazing people that had done, you know, precursor research in the years before that it helped build my proficiency. And from there, I was able to move on to the next phase as far as I consider, which is research and development of knowledge, which is really understanding the uniqueness of each of the victims. And I still struggle when I have to use the word victim because to me it's just another label that they shouldn't be. They are, Maureen and Melissa and Megan and Amber and so many others. And they're much more, to your point, much more than their job,
Mm-hmm.
their occupation, or what they felt they had no other recourse but to do. I would certainly not want to be labeled for what I do for a living.
Of
I'm
course.
I'm so much more than that. So I'm excited and pleased that you're creating a forum where we can discuss the lives of the women and all of the victims, whether they are attributed, presumed, or probable. I believe all of them deserve to have their voices and their stories told respectfully and with as much fact as can be supported.
Yes, well, thank you for that. And today, I'm focusing strictly on the Gilgo Beach 4. I'm focusing mostly, strictly on Maureen and Melissa and Amberlynn and Megan. But obviously, there's so much out there. I mean, the media has been saturating the news, especially here on Long Island. I mean, we know now that this goes so much further back, and I mean, here we are. It's August 8th, 2023, and we're talking about this. But I've been saying to myself, my goodness, we're talking about the Gilgo Beach Four, but where are we going to be a year from now? I mean, when we think about this investigative team and what they've been doing, and the work that they've been doing, and the fact that they identified, Fire Island Jane Doe number 7 now as Karen Vergata. I mean, the information that we're finding each day, it seems like there's more and more information coming out, and God knows where we'll be a year from now, and how many victims will be possibly tied to Rex Heuermann. I mean, that's something else to consider.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's a frightening thing at the same time
Yes.
because we at some point are going to have to acknowledge that he could be quite prolific,
Oh yeah.
and three and considered four victims is, in my opinion, prolific already.
Yes.
And to go further than that, and to add Valerie and Jessica, it's really frightening how something like this can continue to happen without, and with all the mitigating circumstances that have affected the investigation and etc. But to really focus on the victims is so important to me. I mean, I do it every day on my Twitter profile. It's someone every day, and at the heavy and saturated days of the suspect, I make sure to start that day off or end that day off with just images and a story about the victims, because that will always be what matters more than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like, even though I'm talking about the Gilgo Beach Four, and I'll piggyback on this again, I feel like we have to talk about the other victims because there are so many more. I mean,
Yeah.
right now the investigators are just scraping the surface of this, but, information is coming out that Rex Heuermann had properties in Massachusetts, New Jersey, South Carolina, Las Vegas, and they're looking into murders there that could possibly be tied to him. When I think about this and I wrap my head around this case, I mean, it comes to mind Ted Bundy. I mean, I think about Ted Bundy and how many states he killed in and how many people's lives he took in so many different states across the United States, looking at, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, Utah, Florida. I mean, those are just a few states, Colorado. I mean,
Yeah.
we could be talking about Rex Heuermann in the same vein as Ted Bundy, and that's really scary. I mean, but one thing I really want to focus on also, I think it's important to remember that, if it weren't for Mary Gilbert pushing for finding her daughter, Shannon Gilbert, when she went missing, I don't know necessarily that this case would be where it is today. Because it was
It
because
wouldn't
of
be.
her.
It really
Yeah.
wouldn't be.
It was because of Mary Gilbert, and God bless her, God rest her soul, that she fought for justice for her daughter, and they would have never possibly found those bodies of Megan and Melissa and Maureen and Amberlynn, and so many others. So, I have to acknowledge the Gilbert family. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have tremendous respect for the families. I personally place them on the highest of pedestals. I get exceptionally anxious even interacting with any of them. I don't speak on their behalf. There are times people, want to connect to them through me, and I'm really hesitant about it. Their lives are fragile, and I don't want to be a conduit to any further disruption in their lives. So I literally struggle every time, and I'll go through a couple of filters of people that I know. Is this worthy of passing on? Blah blah blah. Because again, it's not gatekeeping. It's having an awareness of what they go through, and there are times it's hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So for me, just respecting them at such a high level and as objective as I try to be when adminning or moderating the groups or in my own conversations in my other social profiles, um, I admit happily that I lose objectivity a little bit when it comes to any of the family members
Mm-hmm.
because they're sacred. You know, they really are. They have been through experiences very few of us have or could even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do my part to ease that burden with whatever little I can contribute, then I'm honored and I'm blessed and
Mm-hmm.
humbled by it.
Well, thank you for the work that you do. I mean, yeah, I have to commend you for the way that you protect them, and the way that you hold their memories sacred. I mean, no family should go through what these families have been through, and a lot of people sympathize with them, but sometimes it's hard. Like you people want to get close to them and feel their pain, but you really can't unless you've been in their shoes. And
Right.
it's just what they've been through. Like I say, no family should ever have to endure that. And then, it's bad enough losing a loved one. But think about this for a minute. Every day, it's splashed across the media, especially now that Rex Heuermann has been, incarcerated and charged with their possible murders. It's like every day it's in their face. And they can't escape that. And people need to be respectful of those boundaries and be respectful of them and their feelings. And but I think for me, the reason why I'm here today and doing this is because I really want to talk about them because these are girls that had hopes and dreams of bettering their lives and bettering their futures. They weren't just sex workers. And I hate when people describe them that way. These girls had dreams of bettering their lives. Two of the girls, Maureen and Megan, they had children and they were trying to make a life for their children, a better life than they had. Can you speak to that at all? Anything that you know personally about the victims that you would like the public to know?
I mean, I consider myself, if I have one success in this life, it's being a dad to my daughter. I think being my daughter's dad is the greatest gift I've ever been given. And to just enjoy every interaction I have with my daughter means more to me than just about anything. So when I see the picture of Megan with her daughter and that just incredible, lively smile that's so genuine and authentic, um, like my heart jumps because and I get emotional because it is something near and dear, and that bond, it's inseparable, and it hurts when it's broken and by an outside force that no one would have expected. So, to that point, honoring Megan as a mom is I can't do enough to do that.
Of
So,
course.
I especially with today being the anniversary of her mom, Lorraine's passing. I put posts all over of Lorraine and Megan, and they're up there together, and helping to drive this justice forward. So my heart is with them today, and the family of Megan,
Yes.
and even thinking of Maureen. Maureen is I'm I'm very much proud of Maureen. Her poem, "Make a New Reality," when Missy shared that with me, and um, it's telling, it's revealing, it is so heart fulfilling. I don't even know if that's a phrase, but it is now. It's incredibly moving, and and it's so insightful, and it gives a great glimpse into her aspirations, her frustrations, her honesty, and her life. And she too was robbed from, enjoying the joys of motherhood. And and all of that, to
Mm-hmm.
see her children, grow up and accomplish things on their own, to be a part of that. And I'm glad that, her kids and Megan's daughter aren't blasted along the media or on social media,
Mm-hmm.
because they deserve their privacy. I think when it comes to Maureen, obviously Missy is the face of the advocacy for Maureen, and no better force
Mm-hmm.
for Maureen than Missy. And
Mm-hmm.
Missy's just, I admire her so immensely. But that's the point. These two women had a whole incredible life ahead of them,
Yes.
and they were close to getting away from that.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Melissa, who was just a fierce entrepreneur. Like, she was going to definitely make something of her life. And I think that kind of exuberance and, go blindly forward is so impressive, and for such a young person. And I look back and, like, well, how old was I when I did this, or how old was I when I did that? And
Yeah.
it's still, it pales in comparison to the force of nature that these women possessed at such a young age.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, yeah. When you talk about Melissa, I mean, didn't she have dreams of becoming a hairdresser? I think she was working in that field. She wanted to open up
Yep,
her own shop. Like, I mean,
yep,
you know, so when people, use the word sex workers, I'm like, you understand, it's not like that. I'm like, these girls were
right.
trying to better their lives, and I actually, had the pleasure of sitting in on a presentation by John Ray, who is a representative. He's the attorney for Shannon Gilbert and Jessica Taylor. He spoke at Bayport Blue Point Public Library last week, and he said that these women kind of got roped into this business because of who they were, because they were vulnerable, because they were good girls, because they wanted to make something of their lives, and fortunately they saw this as an opportunity, but they were also dragged in by people, and it was tough for them to overcome their circumstances, but they had dreams. And I wish people, if I can leave one thought with people, that's the thing I would like people to know, is that you know being a sex worker did not encapsulate who they were. They had dreams of doing better and overcoming their circumstances. And these could have been girls any of us could have known. So,
Yeah, I think we don't know what people have done in their past. It doesn't define them. You could move onto a street block and get to know your neighbor and think that they're the most amazing, genuine person, kind-hearted, and then you could discover something that they had to do in order to survive. And as a society, we have to look a little bit beyond ourselves to even attempt to understand what survival means for certain people, what survival means for anybody. At some point, you'll do what you have to do. And, some of them had to do these things. Some of them were honestly manipulated into doing it. And that, I know you've seen some of my posts. I get very amped up or aggressive when it comes to that, because that game is harmful. It's
yes.
dangerous, and it is a terrible thing for people to manipulate other people into doing what they need, and it's disrespectful, and it's harmful. So I'm not going to go into that because I'll
No,
get
I
my
know.
blood pressure up.
Yeah, I know.
But
I agree. I
um,
agree. But I mean, we look
but
at Jeffrey Epstein, and we look at, people who have seen that Netflix documentary and how these girls got roped into that.
yeah,
And seeing how once they got into the business, they had to recruit other girls to do it. I mean, it's,
yeah,
people ask, how can they do something like that? But it happens a lot easier than people think, and the reality of it is it's a sad reality. So, but they target certain girls, These
They
girls were
do.
good girls, you know. Their heart was in the right place, and I think because they were so eager to please and so willing to do whatever they needed to do, not only for themselves but for their families, you know,
Right.
they became easy targets, and you know, unfortunately, it's what led to their death, and it's a shame, and it's just awful. But
It is, and I think part of what I, singular, me, a nobody, can do is to use whatever forum I have to leverage how beautiful they were,
yeah.
how caring and loving, how doting, how even the rough parts, how they struggled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, knowing that Amber struggled doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make her any less beautiful or loving or doting. It we're all vulnerable to some degree, and we all have our life struggles. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel it's my contribution. I think that's a generous word. I honestly feel compelled to do the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my calendar is full of alerts for every single possible imaginable anniversary, birthday, everything for
Mm-hmm.
probably close to 300 people that matter. Not that anyone else doesn't. It's just I can only handle so many alerts in one day.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I use my forums, my free time to, you know, write a quick thing about Amber, or write a quick
Mm-hmm.
thing about Megan or Shannon or Jessica. Like, it's a little bit. And if a friend of any of those people see it, or a family member, or someone who might remember something about that and can really wrap their head around, oh, yes, they were much more. And that's what we got to get. We got
Yes.
to stop going from person X, job,
Mm-hmm.
victim, to just person
Well, I admire
or
your
mom.
dedication to these victims. I really do. And it keeps me going. People ask me all the time, they're like, why are you care about this? I said, because, well, for several reasons. You know, number one, this is happening in my backyard. This is my where I was born and raised. I love Long Island. I'm a Long Islander and I'm proud to live here. But also, you know, these girls were so vulnerable. They came from loving families. This could have been your daughter. You know, this could have been your sister. Think about that for a
It's so
minute.
true. I mean, I listen, I come from a big family, and you know, some of us are better than others of
Mm-hmm.
us, or different stations of life, or happier versus not. Some are married forever, some are like me, broken marriages. And you know, it doesn't make me any less human
Mm-hmm.
than anybody else. Some of people in my family and close friends have struggled with drugs, and you can understand and you can relate. And when you have experiences, life experiences like that, it makes these women even more embraceable as a person,
Mm-hmm.
to understand that and not judge that there's no judgment. And one of the things I've trained myself to do, I read a million things about all of these victims. Hate saying that, but and whenever I see their name, because if you're reading and you're reading fast, you can just bypass, you know,
Yes.
the whole name. You know, it's Maureen Brainerd Barnes. You're like, you know that. But I've trained myself to just say that name even when I'm reading, because it's that tiny little thing that does only something for me, but it keeps their honor, their memory at honestly the highest it can be.
Yes.
And when you live at that standard, that's why I'm out there correcting false narratives. That's why I'm out there having
Mm-hmm.
arguments with people I hope I'll never meet, but
Mm-hmm.
just to reset the narrative to what the base fact is.
That's
I'm not
right.
going to change your opinion or your perspective. That's on you.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if I can sit there and publicly state this is a fact and this is hearsay,
Yes.
then there you go.
I agree. I
And
mean,
I can source it.
yes, yes, and that's so important. I mean, you know, now, like I said before, the media is saturated with this story. I mean, it's just everywhere. I was actually at the courthouse. I was there for his arraignment, and I mean, you had to see the media that was there. I mean, there were people, news media from all over the world. Forget the United States. There were people from Europe, news media, Australia. I mean, this case has really taken on a life of its own. But I'm also on Facebook. I'm a moderator of a Facebook group dedicated to Gilgo Beach, and the thing is, like, yeah, it's very important to really monitor those comments and what people are saying, because right now everybody's coming out with their own theories, and I'm always just like, let the investigators do their work, stick to the facts. You got to shut that stuff down, because I mean, people go on a tangent, and it's like, oh, reel it in.
Well,
So.
there are many schools of thought. And, there were times, especially, I don't know, 7 years ago, perhaps, I had my own theories. I've amended one theory for another. I've tried to marry up loose ends and, you know, from a concerted cabal to one prolific serial killer out there with 100 plus, like, you go all over the place to, of course, it's Long Island, so it's always Suffolk County particularly, so it's going to be, law enforcement corruption. And
Yes.
these are all possible facets
Yes.
of everything. So, when it comes to the suspect, is he a genius? Well, he's a clever guy that got enabled by a system that was trying to protect its own misdeeds.
I
So it
so agree
allowed
with
for
you.
that to continue to go.
Yeah.
And that was part of the lore. So as there are people on Long Island that really did not even know about Gilgo Beach, which to me
I
is
know that it
astonishing.
astonishes me as well. I mean, and you bring up a good point about the police corruption. I mean, it's very hard for me to talk about this case without touching upon the police corruption. I come from a family where the members of my family was in law enforcement, and I have the highest respect for police investigators, for Suffolk County Police Department, but you'd have to be blind not to know that there was corruption going on. I mean, you look at, the old administration that was there, led under, Chief James Burke, Thomas Spoda. And, rather than get into the details, people can read about it, but obviously there was corruption there. And there was,
Yeah.
the investigation was not done properly. There were a lot of things that were not done that should have been done. I mean, and I have to commend, Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison and Suffolk County Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, because in 2 years, a little less than 2 years, they have been able to do and come so far in this investigation and do things in this investigation that the previous administrations couldn't do in 10 years, over 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Or refuse to do.
Yes, refuse to
Yeah.
do, absolutely. So, God bless
Yeah.
Rodney Harrison and Ray Tierney. They are really paving the way, and really coming along in this investigation, and their team is doing great work, and I have to commend them for that. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think the success of the initial charges, followed up by hopefully soon the subsequent charge
Yes.
for Maureen, and then if they can connect anything else, I think right now that task force has not only incredible momentum going into the public element with all of this. I think now even their pressure to continue excelling at this investigation will be like nothing else in the past. It'll
Yes.
supersede everything from Zodiac to Golden State
Oh,
Killer. This will be something for the textbooks, to really do a poor cliche with that one. But literally, this will be groundbreaking, and I think it'll get even more support from any organization that they ask for, because this is really an international case now, because so many people have, I mean, you've seen your own group explode
yeah.
with
Yes.
membership, and
Yes.
and it's great that people want to inquire about it. It's great to
Yes.
ask questions and learn, because everybody could bring a different perspective, another
Hmm.
element to it. So, as an admin or a mod, I've always tried to share the resources, show the
Yes.
resources, coach them towards the facts,
Yes.
formulate your own opinion, and where your opinion deviates from mine, I can exist in the same space.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be, gloves on animosity, but
Yes.
some people get contentious about and protective of their theory, and oftentimes it blinds them from really moving forward and
Y-
seeing.
Yeah, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, and that's so important in an investigation when you target one thing and you refuse to look at other things. So,
Yeah.
and that often leads to, failures in investigation. One of the things, though, that I like is that, sometimes police will be like, oh, we found our suspect, he's in custody, and that's it. But, I'm glad that Rodney Harrison and his team of investigators are continuing to investigate this, because there are other victims. There are so many other victims. And just because they have been tied, he has been tied, pardon me, Rex Human, to three of the Gilgo Beach Four. There are so many others out there, which I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. Speaking about your map, I know that you have a map, and would you like to speak about that at all? Because your map is just, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming, but it's
My map.
brilliant. I mean, the research that you have done and the map that you created of the victims that are possibly connected here is just simply amazing.
Yeah, so we have a mutual friend. She's an admin, and her and I talking several years ago how she had always wanted but never had the time to do a map, where she can put input the data and access it. And I appreciated that, because I'm also very data savvy,
Yes.
but I love a good qualitative visual. And I searched around for several different map incarnations. Once I had the Google map, I did several iterations of that one, with some input from, from our mutual friend, from Peter Vronsky, and how he utilized
Yes.
the map. I referenced other maps, but I came to the map that's in existence now. The map is only 14 months old,
Mm-hmm.
but it has 5,000. I hate saying this,
I know.
um, data points, because
Yes.
they're not data points, but just in the quick technical term, the locations that are there, they represented, of course, it initially represented, I started off with Shannon. And
Mm-hmm.
then I added Maureen,
Yes.
Melissa, Megan, Amber. Then I added Jess and Val and Asian Doe and
Yes.
Toddler, Peaches. And it just explodes from there. And you start off with this one element, and it explodes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still exploding. So the map now has encapsulated all of the unidentified victims, all unidentified victims on Long Island. It's complete up until 2015.
Now, if
It
people,
encaps. Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just if people wanted to access that, can they access that on your website, Catching List?
It's open source, so they can
Okay, open
go
source.
on
Okay.
my. You could see it on my link tree. It's pinned to my personal Facebook page, but it's also
Okay.
pinned to all of the Facebook groups. It's also pinned to my Twitter,
Okay.
um, and it's out there.
Okay.
It's accessible. It's open source. Anybody can see it. Nobody can edit it or comment on it, but
Mm-hmm.
the map is started off with one person. It has 5,000 now. There's about
Yeah.
100 locations too, but because it's got a life of its own now, that I get calls from people across the country. Can you add my dad, my sister, my aunt, my cousin? I last night I added someone because they reached out to me,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the victims from Oregon right now have reached out to me. They're on the map because
Mm-hmm.
of it. You know, I
Okay.
follow I follow a lot of things, and I get them onto the map, like all the Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas, and wherever there's a hot spot, I tend to be on top of it. But at the end of the day, I especially since the arrest and since Karen Vergata's
Yes.
identification, I haven't had time to do much into the map
Mm-hmm.
other than add the suspects' building permit locations. That's on there
Okay.
because
Yes.
what you can do with the map is extrapolate and compare, and the map is actually assisted in several comparisons being validated already. So that's the success of a map like that, where it can all be compared. All the data is chronological by year
Mm-hmm.
and day, so it's all chronological. It is a lot of
Excellent.
work,
Yes.
but it's a passion of mine.
Now, just for listeners out there, that map, is that for missing persons related specifically to this case, or is this just
No, it started off as that. It
okay?
started off with the victims. It started off
Yes.
with probables like cherries or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yes.
And then it became because they were unidentified on Long Island, Riverhead Jane Doe
Mm-hmm.
or Setauket Jane Doe.
Yes.
So they became on the map. And from there, then, all right, well, if there's a doe out there, let's see who's missing and try
Mm-hmm.
to compare them. So they became on the map. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, the map owns me. I no
Yes.
longer
Okay. Yes. It's become
have
a
any
life of its
control
own.
over it.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could do it while commuting, I
Yes.
would continue doing it.
Yep.
But from there, it's a matter of assisting and putting something out there that other people can access, other people can reference, and within each um, element where there's an unidentified person, there's the case files off of NamUs in there. There's links to the
Nice. It's
NamUs
great.
file. There's any website links, or etc. So it's all there for other people to use.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today and sharing all this information. I know I appreciate it. I know the victims' families appreciate it. And we just got to keep working towards, preserving the memory of the victims. So,
That
very
no
important.
truer words. Yeah, no truer words can be said. They
Yes.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
They matter not only to their loved ones and their families, but they matter to people like us that care about them and
Mm-hmm.
their memory.
Yes.
So thank you for giving me an
Yes.
opportunity.
Thank you.
I was nervous about it, but I felt much more
Well, so was
comfortable, of
I. So it's
course.
my first podcast episode. So thank you so much. And I'm glad that you were able to share your time and your expertise with us. So thank you.
Thanks so much for
All
having
right.
me. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. So I would like to just end on this note. I did meet John Ray, legal representative attorney for Shannon Gilbert and Jessica Taylor, two of the Go-Go Beach victims, last week. And his words were very powerful, very profound. And he left us with a lasting message that I'd like to leave with you today, and that is that these women matter. They had dreams of bettering their lives and making a better future for themselves and for their families. And I think John Ray said it best when he said that these women deserve mercy. Do not let their murders be in vain. Their spirits live on. And I pray for their souls and for their families that justice will finally be served. I do want to send special thanks today to Raul for his time and his expertise. And I'd also like to thank Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, and their team of investigators for their dedication and hard work on this case. So until we meet again, this is My True Crime Obsession, signing off. Thank you for listening, thank you for following, and thank you always for your support.